Hello, social workers of Alabama. Hope y'all are doing good today. All right, we're going to get rolling today with our live, excuse me, and we're going to be talking about clues to why depression exists and autism, um, and some things that we need to know about before we treat. Things we need to know about before we treat. One thing that I'm going to say that I recommend is that um, if you are going to be providing treatment for individuals who have autism, to me, on any level, we're doing a disservice if we are not properly trained. I think it's essential that much research and training as necessary is given so that we can appropriately know and understand some of the things that are unknown about working with individuals with autism. What do I mean by that? When we're talking about the idea of why depression and suicide is such a significant thing that exists in the autism community, there are a lot of unanswered questions about that. And in some research, or not research, but some articles and things like that that speak, from authority on these issues, they say they just don't really know why this exists. But to me, it seems quite obvious. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. I want to talk to you about my experience actually in meeting with someone who is autistic. And like one of the questions we're going to ask, what is the difference between someone being high on the spectrum versus low on the spectrum? That was a question that I posed to my supervisees. What's the difference? Do you know the answer for that? What's the difference between having someone who is high on the spectrum versus someone who is low on the spectrum? And the answer to that, just in short, so I don't forget, um, when you're high on the spectrum, you have less severe symptoms. But what we discussed, um, the other week, and I think I brought that to the live, is that many times when individuals are high on on the spectrum, they are a higher risk for having some of the more severe depressive issues that can lead to suicidality or suicide, not even suicide. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that and my experience with someone I met who was diagnosed with autism, or who has autism. I want to use my terms correctly. So forgive me on that. And gave me a little bit of perspective about how we should follow um, with treatment, because a lot of times we're missing the mark. And so before I get into that real quick, I want to talk to you about that and talk to you about some things that you may not know especially when we're talking about females who have autism. It's some things that we should know that I brought this to my groups. They didn't know it either. I'm just now learning it. And it's like, how is it that we don't know this? And so I want to put it out there so that this helps you with the assessment, helps you with treatment, and you don't have to be in a psychotherapeutic setting to benefit from this. But just before we get into that, I do want to share a few items that I have here. Um, and I can't ever get this right, y'all. I'm so sorry. I mean, I really, really try. Okay, I think this is the one, because you know what? We have a live coming up, a live continuing education unit, or continuing education webinar. It's online. It's coming up. I gotta hurry up. It's coming up soon, August 20th, and we want you to be there. Let's tell you a little bit about it. Our speaker is going to be none other than LB Brown, LICSW, and LB is going to be speaking on the subject of perinatal mental health, empowering social workers through education. We appreciate you doing this for us. Of course, if you're a part of Social Workers of Alabama, you get a special little deal for coming in and seeing us. And then we have the DSM training, the DSM 5TR training. For those of you all who don't know, if you're LICSW, this is a required training that you get a DSM 5TR get DSM-5 TR classes or a class that speaks about some of the updates, and we have that for you. So we hope that you would come and check us out, and that's on August the 27th. That will be 3 hours of CUs, and then we have the online on demand, so you can do it on your own time and get what you need there. And then lastly, we're probably going to move this to November the 11th. Book your book your opportunity to become a clinical supervisor. We have the clinical supervisor training coming up, and we just had it on the 29th. We need to update the information, and it was awesome. It was awesome. We had a great crowd, and we were happy for that. And those of you all who were wanting to become supervisors, we invite you to come. But let's go on and get back to the topic here. And so one of the questions, of course, this is about helping individuals who are supervisors find topics and ways of presenting. And we talked about a lot of different things throughout all of our groups. And we didn't even, I was supposed to be talking about school shootings and how social workers should put together the plans to react to the situation, and the I forget the term that's used for the planning that goes on when these things occur. But anyway, we got on to some other things, obviously. So one of the questions that was asked is, and I want to ask you, and I brought this up, I think, in one of the previous lives. When we talk about neurodivergent versus neurotypical, what are we talking about? These are terms that we need to know, and for some, it may be offensive if we don't know them. I haven't always known these terms. I'm learning a lot about this, and the topic keeps coming up. I was just recently at a training, and I ran into somebody who just gave a deeper perspective. Her name was Jessica, but no, it's Penot. I probably didn't pronounce that right. And Jessica is the one that I was talking about, who is neurodivergent. And so neurodivergent it refers to individuals who may have ADHD, who also may have autism and a few other things. But we need to know, and neurotypical, that is individuals who don't. Okay. High on the spectrum, we talked about that. All right. One of the things that she brought to my attention, and she's high function, she has a group practice. You would not ever know that she is neurodivergent or lives with autism. You wouldn't know that because she says she masks a lot. But for the social, I think she said she didn't have to mask that much, but she was just giving me insights on the life of someone living with autism, and these things a lot of us don't have a clue about, and I certainly didn't. And I just wanted to bring some crucial things that we should know to our attention, because a lot of times we may not understand, why is depression existing with those who experience autism. Why is it higher suicide rates with those? And we're going to quote some stats in a minute. And some of the things aren't so obvious, and I'm going to talk about that. But let me see. What is it that you think first of if you were to be providing support for someone who is neurodivergent, who has autism? What would be your approach to therapy? What kind of issues would you be focusing on first? Because many times we know individuals who experience autism, their experience is that they're sometimes bullied. They sometimes have challenges with adapting in social environments. They often require special, what do you call it? Reasonable accommodations that they aren't granted. Like, after working for 6 hours, they might need 30 or 45 minutes to take a break, in addition to the regular break. They may be sensitive to lights and things in the room. They may be sensitive to sounds and may need special accommodations. Whereas if everybody else's office is just, you know, an open floor, they may need to be in a place to where it's quiet. Okay. And a lot of times this is viewed as them being problematic. It's them not being able to adapt. And that's kind of what Jessica, in a sense, was telling me, is that sometimes the approach to work with these with individuals who have been experiencing autism is that we look to provide treatment that helps them to adapt into the neurotypical world, the world that we live in, those who don't experience autism or ADHD. We look to help them with, oh, well, let's look at helping them with social skills. That used to be my thing. Oh, let's help them adapt with social skills. And not to say that's not important, but the problem is that sometimes the approach, from what she's saying, the approach is not appropriate because we're not getting into their world to find out the things that are causing them disruption. We're looking more at trying to get them in a place to where they're able to adapt to our world or the normies world, or some term that I think they use. And many refer to us as neurotypicals. So just the way that I've heard the language, it's almost as if, and this has been my impression, is that is if they feel they're in a different, not a different world, but different, very different from us, which there is a lot of difference, but they see themselves as being in a certain group, not like you. Okay. And that's not in a negative way. And the challenge is them trying to adjust in our world. And that's something that she stressed about, into a degree, about some of the concerns. Now, I want to move forward to some of the things I said that I would talk about, right? So a lot of times the depression is coming because I'm having to mask, I'm having to adjust. I'm not feeling like you. I don't feel that way. I don't even think like how you think. Okay. And I don't necessarily understand boundaries that are boundaries for you. And in reading some of Jessica's, what I didn't mention is Jessica is a big time writer. She has about 10 books. You can check her out on Psychology Today. She's a writer for Psychology Today. And I've just ran through some of her articles. It's just some pretty serious things. And going through her articles, there are a few things that I learned that we should all know. Okay. But not just her article. Because of my conversation with her, I looked up some statistics that we should also know when we're providing treatment. And this is through autistica.org. More than 6 in 10 autistic people have considered suicide. 6 in 10 have considered suicide. Why? Well, if you're feeling different in a different world, if people aren't making adaptations for you, um, if your social support system is not solid, sometimes just us as humans, we may be by nature introverted, but sometimes we're forced into introversion because when we try to assimilate with everybody else, it wasn't accepted, or a lot of bullying, like I said, a lot of those types of things. Anyway, let me stick with the script. Okay, we're moving. All right. More than 3 in 10 autistic adults have attempted suicide. So I can't, and this is the thing, is that autism, the way that we're seeing it, and I think I mentioned this in the other video, is not what it is. A lot of times the view that some of us have is someone who has more severe symptoms, where in actuality, you're probably seeing someone who has autism right now in your practice, or in the environment where you work. They probably work with you. You don't even know. Sometimes we don't see the symptoms. Sometimes we don't know what to look for concerning some of the symptoms. And we look at stereotypical symptoms, and we've got to be more open to learning. And that's what I'm trying to do, because I feel like I haven't been doing a good justice. Almost 8 in 10 autistic adults have a mental health condition. So that's almost every single person who has been diagnosed or with autism have a mental health diagnosis. Okay. So there are things that are concerned that need to be looked into, but sometimes not the way that we typically look into it. So going back also, I think this is in Glamour Music magazine. What is a unique concern? Oh, males versus females. Of course, Most diagnosed are males, but there's some things we should learn about the female population because it's very different. Okay. When we're looking at the female population, research shows that 66% of autistic adults have another comorbid. What's another comorbid for autism that we need to know about, that we might not know about? Check this out, y'all. This is, man, oh man, I wish I could just come across this stuff every day. Research shows that 66% of autistic adults have PTSD. Over what? That's what we have to find out. The majority have PTSD. This is something that needs to be on my treatment plan, something that they may not just come forward with, because many times our clients don't, and so many times our clients don't even know that their symptoms represent these types of conditions. But 66% of autistic adults have had trauma to the point that it has caused PTSD. So if only 66%, which is a lot, have experienced PTSD, how many others have experienced trauma but don't have PTSD? So it's a lot of trauma that we're maybe not knowing that exists in this group. And I don't know why I'm talking about it a lot, but it's, as I've been talking about it, a number of my supervisees are working with individuals who may have autism and they don't even know it, and things are adding up. And so questions are starting, no doubt, to be asked about, hey, well, this sounds like this, and we're putting the pieces together. Okay. This is super important. 91%, here we go, about the women. What is it that all of us should know if we're treating a woman who lives with autism? This is serious, man. This almost scares me about the probability that I can have a client coming into my office with a certain situation or condition, and I completely overlook it because I don't know what commonly is associated with the population. 91% of autistic females meet diagnosis for the criteria of PTSD. That's not the one. 90% of females. Let's read this off. I'm gonna share my screen with you so you can see this. That I mean, this is not my stuff. Um, show you that training real quick before I switch out. All right, so here we go. 6 in 10 autistic. We talked about 3 in 10 attempted suicide. Okay, so check this out. Back in 2022, a study found that nearly 9 in 10 autistic women have been victims of sexual violence, with 2/3 of victims being very young when they were first assaulted. This is what Jessica brought to my attention, and after it was, she had mentioned it in the group that we were in the training, and I was just floored. I was like, oh my goodness, what are we missing? And so I said, I think it's necessary, because some groups don't get the justice that they need. We don't want to be a part of that. I may be counseling someone who has autism, may not know it. And this is a thing that I have to stress. It doesn't mean that these things occur with your client. So we don't ever want to box anybody into some symptoms or a diagnosis. Just as a clinician, we need to have an awareness so that we can rule things out. I'm gonna read this last quote from Jessica, um, in one of her articles. And this is the experience that she spoke about. So if you sit in a room with autistic women, you will find that almost all of us have been victims of multiple sex crimes. The trend drifts into adulthood, and I have a special thing for women. I'm sorry, with providing counseling, because I work with a lot of women who experience counseling, I mean experience trauma and have difficulties entering into romantic relationships. So that's a thing. It has something to do with other stuff, whatever, but that's what I end up doing. My sister does it too. Anyway, when autistic adult women begin seeking out adult romantic partners, Juliet Wise, check her out. I'm sorry. When autistic adult women begin seeking out adult romantic partners, they become easily targets again. All right, let me start reading for real. Since we were unable to read social cues, we don't see many of the red flags neurotypical people see. That's people without it. We don't, we often don't have groups of female friends to guide us. Again, we are used to being told our behavior is weird, wrong, and needs correcting so that we are easily gaslit on trauma. Okay. We lack the ability to recognize danger in humans in general. And even as adults, we often don't even realize a crime has been committed against us until long after it has occurred. So that means we didn't get any treatment. That means that we didn't get to process that in a way that's helpful. I'm going to leave it off here. We're at 20 minutes. We're going to stop here. But I'm going to try to remember to, uh, if I can get to it, to clip some of these articles and things. If you want to present that to your people or your person for supervision, it'd be great information. Or if you just want to know about it for yourself, then I want to be able to help with that. But let's learn together. I'm wishing you all a great weekend. Until next week, y'all take care. Bye bye.